This podcast and every other podcast on my channel is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. In the case of the particular podcast that you are about to watch, Video Game Writing 101, which comes out on the second Monday of every month, Patreon got it 2 days early and completely unedited. I did have to make a lot of edits to this one just to make sure it was completely safe for YouTube, because we ended up talking about some things that are not safe for work, and I don't want to hurt the views of this already very niche podcast topic. So if you would like to help out, help pay contributors, and support the content as it is, check out the link in the description or go to patreon.com/Charolanazard. Hello everyone, I'm Alanah, welcome to Video Game Writing 101. This is Cliff Bleszinski. Cliff, for anyone who doesn't know you, who are you exactly?
I made video games for 25 years. I worked at Epic for 20 years. I started my own studio called Bosky Productions. We made 2 games that unfortunately didn't get much traction. And now I'm working, actually it's pretty much done. I have a memoir coming out November 1st called Control Freak.
Ooh,
yep.
Exciting.
Well, the thing is and also, so I'm also somehow stumbled into being a Broadway producer. So that's my TED Talk. I'm working on other secret projects I can't really talk about too.
So it's lots of stuff, really. Yeah, the Broadway thing is fascinating, though not necessarily as related to this podcast, but I have so many questions about that, like how that started, what that means. Are you just throwing money at Broadway productions?
I mean, it's basically, it is an investment, right?
Yeah.
The thing is so are you familiar with the show Dear Evan Hansen?
I'm not, no.
I'm not going to pitch the show, but there's a character in there. Basically, the actor was a fan of my video game work, and he slid into my DMs, and he basically was like, "Hey, we're looking for fresh producing blood, as opposed to 70-year-old women who live in the Hamptons and shit, right?" And so I was like, "Yeah," because Broadway means the world to me. Because when I was 15, and this is also in the book, my father died. My mother was listening to Phantom of the Opera on repeat, and Phantom, it's one of the OG kind of musicals for me, at least, and it really resonated with me. And so,
that's a very unique way to get into that.
Well, yeah, and so then,
cool.
I co-produced Hadestown, which wound up winning 8 Tonys, and then when my studio Bosky Productions crumbled, it broke my heart. It really fucked me up for a good year. The internet was like total shot and fraud, like, cocky game designer in the studio fail, I'm gonna do a YouTube video about it, kind of shit.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, fuck this shit.
I mean, people still give you shit over it, which is like, the idea that you would want it to go that way seems nuts to me, but that's a lot of the projection. It seems wild.
And then get some new fucking material, insult like my dog or something.
No,
and then,
I'll never insult your dogs. They're too cute.
And then to be at Radio City Music Hall, the missus and I all dressed up, and to see it win 8 Tonys, it's just like, it was the much needed win that I needed. And it's there's another musical that we're going to co-produce upcoming that I can't talk about, but it's going to be fucking huge.
Is that the one that you maybe have mentioned to me slightly?
Slightly.
I'm just going to say people should be very excited.
Yeah. This person is it's based around is in the zeitgeist, so I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But so how did you stumble into the whole writing gig, by the way?
This isn't about me. I've been writing my whole life. Like, I think I just mentioned before we started recording, I was writing books when I was like 12. So the two things that I cared about my whole life were writing and video games, and I paired those originally through journalism. And I started out in print magazines, went and got the 4 years studying journalism at university, but the other half of my major was entertainment writing. So when I realized that I had kind of done all the journalism there was to do, I started I'd always written fiction, but write more fiction for sample purposes. And then I did game jams, and then I started writing for a couple of indie games, and was doing all this stuff under a different name. And then I effectively got lucky. I expected to have to start out at an indie studio, but they had a junior writer position at Santa Monica Studio, so I went for it. It's like, I feel like I am qualified to be a junior writer.
See the back of my book, back of my
oh my
phone?
Gosh, very nice. That's quite a branding you have there.
My favorite thing these days is to just go to a pub with the missus and just read a book, and memoirs,
cool.
The whole 9 yards.
Hell yeah.
I love reading books about demographics that aren't necessarily me, to kind of gain empathy for people that aren't me. I read the new Jim Crow. There's a book called Contested Waters that kind of explains why public pools in post-segregation America were very controversial for African Americans, like swimming in them and whatnot. That's why a lot of Black people don't swim to this day. right?
Wow.
And so much of the stuff is so entrenched in America. It's fucking unbelievable. But
There's
yeah,
there's definitely something about just picking up a book about something that you know nothing about. I read a lot of books about AI. I guess probably to
yeah,
the extent that now I know things about AI, but I used to just like go to a bookstore and that would be the thing I would seek out. I would just buy a new AI book. And lately I've been reading Warhammer. With the lore in Warhammer is so fucking good.
no shit.
Before we rant about books, I did want to ask, do
Yeah,
you feel like there's an overlap between the design of a musical and game design?
absolutely. It's a miracle that a video game ever ships as you're learning
Mm-hmm.
or as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you look at like a musical and the fact that you're looking at lighting, choreography, music, a live band, essentially, somebody could get sick, then you wind up, you having to have an
Yeah.
understudy that has to nail all their beats. They have to hit their marks on stage. Like there's so much overlap there and so much could go wrong on any given night. And the thing is they have to do this 8 times a week for 2.5 hours. Right. And
Yeah.
I have tremendous amount of respect for the performers. And yeah, it's just, we're actually heading up to New York in about a week and a half. I'm going to go see a couple more shows as well. And just, my niece is 17 and she's a huge Broadway nerd. And
Cool.
yeah, the last time I was in California, I went to her quinceanera and she just, she's just a wonderful, wonderful kid. And she, right when she was going through a phase of being bullied by the girls at her school, I was being bullied by the internet as my studio failed.
Aww.
And so it's the whole thing like with the rescue dog. It's like, did I save her? Did she save me? And so
Yeah. That's super
and
sweet.
so I basically like paid for her right now to be in New York to be doing this kind of a 2-week boot camp for theater.
That
So
rules.
yeah, and we bond over Broadway like hard, like like, oh my god, like did you see this performance? Did you see that? Did you see the other? And we went to Manhattan a couple months ago as COVID was seemingly easing. And we got to see some of the shows that, I wanted to see for a while, like Six, which is fucking incredible.
I've heard very good things about it.
Like, as the kids say, it slaps. Imagine it's the story of Henry VIII's 6 wives, but it's told kind of by way of what feels like a 90-minute Spice Girls concert.
Oh, yeah, I'm down.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah,
great.
no, it's incredibly catchy. But Broadway is near and dear to me. Like I'm a big karaoke nerd. I don't know if you've seen on my Twitter.
I have.
Like, I co-own the Raleigh Beer Garden, and every Monday night at 8 o'clock we host karaoke. And the guy
I
who
feel like you pre-plan your set lists, which is like professional karaoke.
I literally have it on my phone, and like I'm not even that good. I'm just like I just go for it. I'm like, we're not gonna take it.
It's about having a good time.
It really is. And we get a really eclectic mix of people there, and it's something that I love. And like the thing is music is near and dear to me. But I never really was formally trained because I was the theater nerd in high school. As Mercutio and Romeo and Juliet, as Lenny and Neil Simon's Rumors, as the lead in 10 Little Indians and all that. And it's something that just will always be close to my heart. I think my next tattoo is going to be the comedy and tragedy symbol.
Oh, nice. Did you ever think about making a musical video game?
I did. The thing is in regards to video games, like in the words of Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon, I feel like I'm too old for this shit. Like, and I consult with game developers a lot. Like I'm still friends with a lot of people at Boss Key that have moved on since, obviously. And I tell them, do what you can to get fuck you money, or just enough to be comfortable. And if you can, get the fuck out.
It's probably very hard. I don't think a lot of people in games making fuck you money.
No, I mean, I lucked out. Tim Sweeney and Mark Rain were very, very good to me. And then I was fortunate enough to invest in Oculus. But the thing is
I use my Quest still almost every day. I love it.
Dude, like it's one of those things. Like I looked at the very, very first version of it, like the duct taped version. And I was like, I want in.
Yeah, it was awesome the first time I tried it. It's only gotten better. Speaking of theater, have you seen Sleep No More?
Oh yeah, we've done it 3 times.
Nice. I've only done it once, and I'd love to do it multiple times. But
did you get so for those who aren't familiar with it, like listening or watching, could you like pitch it?
Sleep No More is you show up at this sort of warehouse type thing in
Chelsea,
in Manhattan, and it's Macbeth played out in different rooms, sort of simultaneously, and it's several floors, and you have the option to pursue one actor and follow them through this building as their play plays out.
It's like a
different
stampede.
scenes. Yeah, it's fascinating, and also I think very game designy in a way that I would actually love for games to emulate that even a little bit better, where you straight up the full player agency, you straight up opt into which stories that you want to see and which ones that you don't want to see. And I think that like you could probably have a weird experience if you just jump between stuff all the time and nothing would make sense. I chose to follow somebody, and then that thing stopped and I followed somebody else and watched scenes in certain rooms play out. And sometimes you'll hear people be like, there's something really interesting this way. And then you just walk in a different direction.
Well, so the thing is also for those watching, like you have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like some eyes wide shut shit. And you're not allowed to talk. Right. And they have like bouncers there and everything like that. But basically, like sometimes if you like appear really engaged with the performance of what's going on, they will sometimes pull you into like a back area and then like have like a one-on-one interaction with you. And it never happened to me. It happened to my sister-in-law, because she's, super hilarious and charismatic. And but I'll never forget like the first time we went, like we saw this lady going through what looked like a World War II hospital, jumps through a window. We jump through the window and follow her through like this like makeshift forest. And then she winds up in like this little cabin with this other woman, and they're having this interaction. And then also the whole thing about Lady Macbeth and out damn spot, the whole like getting the blood out of her hands. I don't know if they do this these days, but back when we went, the actress, there's a clawfoot bathtub, and the lady who plays, Lady Macbeth goes over to the tub, strips down in front of everybody.
That was there when I did it.
Yeah, butt ass naked, right?
Yeah.
And gets in the tub, and she had a little blood capsule, obviously, but she's like, washing the blood out of her hands and everything like that. And it's just like, it's one of the most surreal, amazing experiences like I've ever had. Like
it's extremely uncomfortable in a strange way too. Like I felt very vulnerable especially because I was there by myself, and I think you're encouraged to split up if you go in a group. So you feel uncomfortable and vulnerable while also being extremely engaged in things you've never seen before.
The thing is, it starts off where you wind up in this kind of like BioShock vibe speakeasy, where there's like this Ella Fitzgerald lady like singing, and some of the cast members are there, like feeling totally like BioShock and like tuxes, like drinking mocktails and staying in character. And it's immersive as hell, and it's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I think Ken Levine said that BioShock was in part inspired by Sleep No More. So
no kidding.
BioShock vibes are very much there.
Yeah,
I could talk about that forever, but to pivot away to writing. So how's working on a memoir? What does that entail exactly? I know you've been doing it for a while. Like I can't even imagine, where do you start? What do you choose to include? Like, what is that process?
As a fellow writer, like there's nothing more intimidating than opening like Microsoft Word and seeing the blank page, right? And so, start with, it was a dark and stormy night, that kind of stuff, right? But I mean, that's the thing about memoirs, is I would not recommend writing one, because
that's the take. Don't do it.
I mean, I'll make a little bit of money off of it, right? But the thing is it was in some ways therapy for me, but in some ways it was reliving past trauma, because there have been many video game books written, but none of them have been very deeply personal. And this one for me, like I basically talk about, like it ultimately, let me back up for a second. It ultimately winds up being a love story where, you have a pimply faced, unpopular nerd in high school who grows up as the video game industry grows up alongside him. And then ultimately, gets enough money to fuck off, but finds true love in the process. Right. But the thing is I put it all out there because when I was 15 years old, I lost in the Nintendo World Championships, 1990. My father died, and I was molested by a dude I met online.
All in the same year?
Yes.
Jesus.
So you wonder why I have a case for arrested development. So, and the thing about the trauma and everything like that, it's like, I think, being a somewhat public figure for myself, if I can put this out there and kind of like share it, those who don't feel comfortable talking about it or sharing it will find some sort of solace in it,
Definitely.
And so it was a lot of fucking work, and the editing process, the league, I interacted with 1 million developers in my entire career. And so my editor, Sean Manning at Simon & Schuster, he's like, there's too many characters. I'm like, okay. And so we had to edit that back.
Funny.
But I wound up, so basically it was kind of a hybrid approach where I wrote like 80% of it, but then I was working with this ghostwriter, Todd Gold. If you Google him, he did Little Girl Lost, by Drew Barrymore's book. He did the Osbournes books. He's done a bazillion books, and like this guy, you remember the movie Almost Famous?
Yeah.
By Cameron Crowe. Cameron Crowe was a rock star journalist. You know, that's kind of so autobiographical for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Todd did the same thing. He was embedded with Michael Jackson in Japan in the 80s. He's showing me photos of him and Bubbles the fucking chimp.
Wow.
I'm like, what the hell? And then he was embedded with Madonna in London in the 80s, right? Like, and so like I'm like, Todd, when's your memoir coming out? and he's got this great way about him. He's like this like, you know, late 50s, early 60s guy. And he just, you know, he's like, you know, we were talking about Billy Joel at one point, and I was talking about Christy Brinkley. He sent me a photo of him and Christy Brinkley, which for those of you who are too young to remember, she was the ultimate 80s dream girl. And so basically he was almost like a therapist, you know. So we do a combination of like me sending pages to him, he'd edit them, send them back, ask me questions. He'd do, you know, like verbal interviews with me and things like that over the phone.
I would love that job. Honestly, there was a period of time in high school where I found out what a ghostwriter was, and I wanted to do it. And I still think that's something that I'll probably end up doing like one day down the line. Is like, I feel like interviewing people and hearing their stories and then translating that to some sort of narrative. It sounds super fun. But I think
I think the books that Ice-T's written, you know, it was kind of a hybrid approach for him, you know, having like an interviewer, like a ghostwriter, and him actually writing some of the pages and things like that. The funny fact is,
I imagine Lauren has also helped you with it a fair amount. I would think she's probably had a pretty big impact on like what you write and what you don't write. Like that's got to be something you got to confide in your loved ones.
Well, it's kind of nice when you know, we're actually we'll get back to the book in a second. We're actually throwing a renewal ceremony for our wedding vows. So that's coming up 10-year anniversary of being married. So we're going to throw a soiree.
Nice.
In downtown Raleigh. And, you know, we're doing the whole thing again where we're going to write our own vows, and I'm going to see my friends are going to see me sob like a bitch. So
can I come? I'll be there.
You're welcome to join. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Congratulations.
But yeah, the whole thing about the, you know, writing and everything like that, it's like, you know, it's a lot like game design where, you know, you have your first version and you think it's good, and then it bounces back to the publisher and you're like, no, this is fucking trash. Stop, edit it. And like the first draft was like 350 pages. And then once they edited it down, it was 200 pages. And then once, you know, Todd and I had a lot more conversations, we fluffed it back up to being like 308 pages. And then, you know, you have to do acknowledgements. You have to vet it legal. You have to vet it legally, because my former employer, still, you know, friendly with him. Like I go to like hockey games with Mark Rain still once in a while, right? We text often, and it's one of those things. They have more money than God, and the last thing anybody wants is a lawsuit. So it's not like you're going to crack the book and be like, here's the secret to what makes the Unreal Engine successful. It's going to be like, no, you know, the majority of what's in there is public knowledge. Right. But it's
your perspective on public knowledge.
Exactly. It's viewed from my, you know, my lens of me, you know, trying to come up and be a charismatic, interesting person in this emerging market. The thing is about writing, there's a reason why there's writers' retreats, right?
Yeah. Like,
you know, isolation actually helps a lot. And so I'll tell you another quick story as I rehydrate.
I should have chapstick.
Gotta be able to do it one-handed. So a couple of years ago, my mother-in-law, who was a saint, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
I'm so sorry.
And never smoked a day in her life, you know, raised 4 wonderful kids, grew up in Alabama in a trailer, wound up, you know, working her way to middle class, just wonderful, wonderful woman. Right. And so we had to go back and forth to the suburbs of Louisiana, like nonstop. And at first it was like, I didn't really realize like it had metastasized. I didn't really realize what a death sentence it was. And so before COVID truly hit, I'm like, sweet, I get to go back to New Orleans and go to all the restaurants and the bars and, you know, listen to jazz and throw a parade and shit. And then COVID really hit, and we wound up having to stay across the lake in Mandeville, which is, it's nice, but by nice, it means it has like a Pizza Hut and a Subway because it's across the lake and whatnot. And, oh boy, let's go to Chili's. And we wound up having to stay in Airbnbs of debatable quality. But I had my laptop there, and basically like sitting there, you know, realizing how life is short and seeing the slow decline of her, because the thing about Bleszinski's is Bleszinski's usually go like that. Like my father, had that heart attack when I was 15. Boom, done, dead on a golf course.
When he had the heart attack?
My age, 47.
Damn.
Yeah. He was, I'm pretty sure, sneaking cigarettes towards the end of his life.
But 47.
Yeah. And then genetics or motherfucker. And so that's why, I try and make sure to watch my pounds and weight and whatnot. I don't smoke. I mean, cigarettes, a wink. And then
I'm in California. You can say whatever you want. Smoke whatever you like.
I'll never forget. I was staying at the Ritz in Marina Del Rey, and I just walked to the Green Dot, and it was like a fucking Apple store.
My dad is planning to come visit soon, and my dad's always smoked weed, but it's still very illegal in Australia. And he was stupid. Like, "Do any of your friends smoke? Can I get some weed? Does any friends?" I was like, "Dad, we don't need friends. I can put in a fucking app. You'll get weed to the door in 15 minutes. So I'm planning to take him to, I was going to ask some of my stoner friends what the coolest dispensary is to take him in person, because I think it'll blow his mind. In Australia, they're still in the era where you don't have strains of weed. You just have weed that you buy from some guy on a corner illegally. There's no this one does this and this is from here. But
then it's not regulated and and there's
not safe at all.
It's gonna be fentanyl in it or some shit.
Totally.
It never made sense to me, drug dealers putting fentanyl in their stuff. You're killing your clientele.
I actually don't know why they do that.
It's fucking weird. But anyway, yeah, we went and saw Avril Lavigne in Toronto a couple months ago.
I saw that.
And also it's completely legal in Canada. Mm-hmm. And so just walking into the store, I'm just give me everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, where's I going with this? I lost my train. So basically just sitting there with the laptop and these Airbnbs, and watching my mother-in-law slowly decline. It really makes you realize what's important in life, and talking about, the time I spent in Canada developing the first Unreal, talking about, meeting Bill Gates, talking about, going on stage at Grauman's Chinese Theater to show off Gears 1 and realizing how that would change my life so much. And people still to this day are like, come back and save Gears. I'm look, motherfuckers, I've said publicly I will consult, and nobody's reached out to me. I have Phil Spencer in my DMs, whatever, it is what it is. But if they want to, fine. Otherwise, I'm happy to consult on other projects. But, the thing is writing, back to writing. So I picked up Stephen King's book on writing.
Yes,
right?
I've read that. Mm-hmm.
And I told my writing partner, Todd Gold, when I picked up the book, and he's like, don't read that. And I'm like, what? It's basically, for a lot of writers, it's Save the Cat for screenwriters.
Yeah.
And I TJ Fixman, right?
Yes.
Yeah. TJ's, writer, wrote Insomniac. He writes screenplays these days. He's friends with David Hasselhoff. Anyway, it's
for
weird.
Reference, everybody, Save the Cat is a screenwriting book that is much more about the business side of screenwriting than it is about how to actually write a screenplay. And it's kind of controversial because it tells you to write a generic screenplay to make money. I think there's value in that, in that there's stuff in it that it's if you're going to write a screenplay successfully and you want it to be a full-time job, you do need some of the advice in that book. But it also is not actually helpful for beginning writing the screenplay itself. It's make a Christmas movie to make money.
Well, the thing is, I'm a huge pop culture junkie, right? I read every issue of Entertainment Weekly for 20 years, right?
Wow.
I've sat there at the beach with my wife one time, and she's going over movies, name the director. I'm like, David Fincher, fucking whatever. And I know my numbers, and that's why, for those of you who don't know, usually at Comic-Con, Justin Roiland from Rick and Morty and Alex Hirsch from Gravity Falls and I would throw what we'd call the Big Dumb Yacht Party. And we get the most.
There's no Big Dumb Yacht Party this year.
I know but we get the most eclectic mix of people. Alanah came a couple times. And then the cast of Game of Thrones is there. Weird Al came one time. Lin-Manuel Miranda from Hamilton, Kelly Ripa and her husband, the cast of Riverdale, all sorts of interesting people.
Very big mixes of people too. My favorite thing is seeing a cosplayer who's still half in cosplay makeup interact with some random actor.
That's the whole thing.
It's not just
my whole, exactly. The whole idea is you don't have to be just a famous person. You have to be an interesting person.
Yeah, you didn't do a bougie celebrity party. It's not stupid in that way. It's just a lot of very interesting people.
Apparently Machine Gun Kelly was there one year.
Huh.
Yeah, my boy Damon got a photo with him, and so I'm like, okay, but yeah, that's the thing is, I love entertainment. The thing about Save the Cat is one of the points that really resonated for me is he calls out, if you recall, what was called the Dark Night of the Soul, where it's like boy meets girl, boy loses girl, and it's like, you know, he's like walking in, like it's dark, it's rainy out, and it's like he's lost everything, and that's like the transition to Act 3, right? And that's the thing is, you know, I picked up Final Draft, and you know, I did a short, and I'm hoping to film it at some point. And I'm not going to pitch it right now, but basically, like, you know, learning the little like ins and outs of like Final Draft and how to actually like work with that. It's a brilliant little program.
I highly recommend to anybody who's watching this podcast who wants to be a writer, just learn how to use Final Draft. Like, you will almost definitely need to at some point in your career.
But the thing is, Alanah, I have to ask you, like, why do you want to write for video games? Because there's a reason the 3 Gears games that I really worked on had like 3 different writers, because it will grind the shit. It will grind you down. Like, it is a rough racket.
Gears is still going through that. I just love video games, and I don't think that I will want to do it forever. Like, it already feels that way. Right now, what I get out of getting to write at a place like Santa Monica Studio, which is, like, in my opinion, an absolutely world-class studio, is access to people who are the absolute best in the world at what they do. And I just get to absorb all their knowledge. I feel like every day that I go to work, I'm at university, and I'm learning from these people who have so much knowledge and experience, and it's so rewarding. I almost feel like I should be paying the studio for me to get to work there, because I get to just learn from all these people about, like, different opinions on game design. And one of my favorite things to do is ask people internally how they feel about a recent release that they played, because the perspective that you get from game devs is so different from a lot of the public perspective in a way that is just fascinating. You find out what other people did wrong, and it's super interesting.
There's this thing about game developers, right? There's 2 types. There's the young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed ones that love everything. And then there's the jaded ones that will tear everything down. Like, I played it, but blah, blah, blah.
And they're so vicious too. I'll be like, damn, I didn't even think that was a problem. But it's fascinating.
Like, but I mean, for my problem, like, you know, having worked in games as long as I have, is a good part of my job was playing Spot the Difference. I'd go on like a 5-day, 5 European city press tour to like promote the video game. And then I come back and like the camera would be fucked up, or the blood would be looking stupid. And I'd be like, what the hell? Like, there's one time when I was at Boss Key, and one of my one of the things programmers like to do, because programmers all have a god complex. Do you remember the famous Alec Baldwin monologue from Malice? Look it up. It's legendary. It's like, you ask, because he's a doctor and there's a whole legal case with it and everything like that. And you know, it's like, you ask me if I have a god complex. I am God.
Oh, you know what? I've heard that reference, but I've not actually seen the movie. I've definitely seen that reference.
Being a theater nerd, I just like late at night, I just love looking up monologues, like the Glenn Ross one, where it's like, you know what it takes to sell real estate? Brass balls, right?
That's why you loved Midnight Mass.
Exactly. That whole scene, where the main guy, was his name Riley, I think. Yeah. You know, for those of you who don't know, he you know, he's an alcoholic, recovered. At this small town, but he's having this conversation with this girl that they kind of have a vibe, right? And they're sitting on the sofa. Look it up on YouTube. It's called What Happens When We Die. And he does this incredible monologue talking about, you know, DMT being released, and you dream the ultimate dream and then nothing. And my wife catches me watching the monologue on a regular basis, and it triggers her. It triggers her from her watching her mother die, right? And so for me, that's therapy, right? Because, you know, like I said, Bleszinski's die fast. My nephew at 20 died in a car accident. You know, my mother hit her head and fell over and was found dead 2 days later, right? I'd never seen anybody die from cancer, and it's not fucking pretty. It's not fucking pretty, man. But
no, my stepdad is currently battling cancer. It's terminal, and it's all kinds of awful.
I gotta warn you, dear. It's you know, the thing is in the movies, it's like, no, the people will struggle until the last minute.
Yeah, but my whole to be slow.
My whole point is like the same thing with video game design, like with me being a fan of Transformers and G.I. Joe and all that. It's all grist for the mill, right? And like the thing about writing is, you know, these life experiences, for better or for worse, like they fuel you, you know, and you could leverage that to write stuff, you know. And
I think writing's very therapeutic.
It
like
really
the only
is.
parts of my job that drive me nuts are when I have a million meetings and not enough writing time. That's when I'm like, just let me fucking write something, which
Well,
totally happens.
get that mug that says this meeting could have been a fucking email, you know.
Genuinely, a lot of them.
And the thing is, you know, like having worked with programmers as long as I have, I'm very big on brevity. Like, just cut to the fucking chase. Like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is I think sometimes, you know, like once in a blue moon, I'll just send Lauren flowers for shits and giggles, because I'm a romantic fucker. But the thing is, just like when you go to 1-800-Flowers, like it gives you the option for like a pre-typed thing to say to the person. And I'm like, look, I know writing's hard, but how much of an uncreative motherfucker do you have to be to not like type up like
For
at
that
least
service to be there, people must use it.
Exactly, like to at least come up with a fucking limerick for your wife, talking about like you like eating her ass or something like that.
Anything.
Like,
They should actually add "I will eat your ass" as a quick option.
Dude, so I have this shirt that I had made. It says "I eat ass" in Japanese.
I think I've seen that.
And
I think I may have seen that.
We printed up stickers that say that, and we plastered them all around downtown Raleigh.
Very nice.
Like only like 3 people noticed it. You know, it's fucking like, see, you know, trolling sucks, but I like subtle trolling, right?
The meaning of trolling has changed. I love trolling, but like what it used to be is intentionally annoying someone with something very minor. Like an example of trolling is I had a conversation with somebody once where I tried to convince them that Ash Ketchum from Pokemon's last name was actually Ash Ketchup. This is a very dumb thing to do, but I was like, no, it's ketchup. No, trust me, it's ketchup. And then they get frustrated. That's trolling. You just make somebody minorly annoyed with something very meaningless. Now trolling is like, I'm going to fucking murder you.
Yeah, these days it's kill yourself.
Yeah, it's changed a bit. And it sucks.
For the record, I don't understand how you like deal with everything online because your engagement is fucking off the charts.
I don't see it. I think I've told you that before. Like, I do not read it.
You could just like tweet like a fart and like I'm just like, damn, girl.
I don't read it. And actually, for security reasons, I have other people monitor my tweets, both Smart. My team and even at Sony. So there are people who do read my tweets so that I don't have to, like for certain harassment cases, which is very nice.
Yeah. I don't doubt you get a lot of that. But back to writing.
Yes.
But the thing is, okay, so when it comes to reading, like, are you a Kindle person or are you a physical book person?
I like books.
Dude.
A little stack of books down here.
We have this exactly. I had this bookshelf installed downstairs, and it's like it's overflowing at this point, right? Because like I used my Kindle for a while, but the thing about Kindle, it started off like, you know, like this size, you know, comfortable, right? And then it started turning into like this.
Yeah, they got smaller and smaller.
My thing is, as you know, somebody, you know, like me lives online all the time. Like we stare at screens all the fucking time.
Exactly.
Right. And then to just sit there and like, there's a local bookstore called Quail Ridge Books in North Hills, right? And I have this thing lately where like, also like a Barnes and Noble opened downtown. Like it feels like physical books are having like a comeback because there's the saying, the more the world goes digital, the more people will cling to physical, right? Yeah. That's why LPs
sentimental about it.
Well,
right. LPs have had a huge comeback, yeah.
Exactly, but just like walking into a bookstore and the smell, right? And I remember reading a story about Marilyn Monroe. What she would do is she'd go into a bookstore and she would open the book and read like 4 or 5 lines, and she'd know immediately if she wanted to read it, right? And the thing is like prose is half the battle, right? Like Cormac McCarthy, The Road, his prose is chef's kiss, right? But there's been books that I've started reading, and like after like 5 pages, I'm thinking about like getting milk at the store, and I'm like,
totally,
I have to reread that. Like, what the fuck? Did you ever read Untamed by Glennon Doyle?
No, I mostly read fantasy, but I also just read a lot of nonfiction.
Just trust me, Untamed, it's a semi-autobiographical. She's a woman. She was married to a dude, and then wrote a book about enduring her straight marriage. And then went to a book signing, and then this lovely soccer player lady came to her book signing, and she's like, "Oh my god!" Fell in love with this lady, divorced her husband, and then and ran off into the sunset. But her prose and it's almost like a self-help book in a lot of ways. It's fucking amazing. But you know, I'll go to these bookstores, and I will wistfully like look at the biography section and just fantasize about just seeing that on the shelves, and then I start thinking about, you know, Simon and Schuster, and thinking about like, oh, are you going to make me do a book tour? Because I'm social media friends with Don Winslow, who wrote a whole bunch of fucking books, and he's very prolific on Twitter. And he talks about his book tour, and I'm like looking at the dates, and I'm like sitting there like, am I gonna have to be in like Toledo? Like, what the fuck, you know? Like,
it can't be that much worse than shipping a video game and having to go to all the international events, I guess, except that you have to go to small towns for a book tour.
Again, in the words of Danny Glover, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Alanah, you hit a certain age where you just want a good night's sleep and a good shit.
I think I'm already there, which is the problem. I went out last night. Out. And I was like, it's about time to go to bed.
Well, also the same thing about like, going to bars as much as I do like to imbibe is I just want to get a drink. I want to be able to take a piss. I want to be able to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like I hate the.
That's where I went last night. Yeah.
And you have to like, you're like having to like, hey, in people's ears, like, and shit like that. I'm just like,
literally the person who I was someone's birthday and I went out and they were like, I can't hear you. Just text me tomorrow. And I was like, okay, I'll text you about this tomorrow.
No, like one of my jams these days is gay bars.
Oh yeah. They've always been fun.
Oh, like I never see fucking fights, like if I get hit on, it's flattering, and then like if my wife gets hit on, she's flattered. It's not going to be some dude like, how you doing? Like it's the funniest thing when dudes try and roll on her. It's like, dude, there's nothing you're going to be able to say to like convince her of anything.
Try
like,
their best.
Oh, they will. Like, but anyway,
she's a babe. It's going to happen.
She's my forever person. Mm-hmm. But the thing is she's been, so supportive of the book.
Yeah.
It's dedicated to her. It's so weird because people are going to pick it up. It was pitched to Simon & Schuster as the Kitchen Confidential for video games. Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace, still miss him to this fucking day.
Yeah.
It is really like seeing inside how the sausage is made without violating NDAs and things like that.
Sure.
But again, very, very, very personal. And
I'm very excited to read it.
November 1st. So when's your memoir coming out?
Maybe give me a few more years before I start on that one.
Well, so the thing I'm sure you're learning about video game writing is that you could have a main character that has like a flamethrower, right? And then like he has to get cut from the game because like the flamethrower was like hurting the frame rate too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go all the way back through all those threads and like rewrite and fucking edit everything, right? And like I'm good friends with
that's been a very big part of my job. Rewrites are a huge thing.
Yep.
Didn't expect that to the extent that it is.
Well, it's a good thing you already have the platinum hair because it'll turn your hair gray.
God, it'll be cheaper. Happens faster.
I've seen so many like game developers like go into the business and like within it's kind of like Obama when he went into office and like, like 2 years later, he goes from like having the dark hair to just being like total, like, white hair. But the thing is I'm good friends with Tom Bissell. Mm-hmm. He wrote Gears 4, Gears 5. He wrote the Disaster Artist, which is the book about the movie The Room, mm-hmm. which wound up being turned into that movie with James Franco and whatnot, produced by Seth Rogen. And he basically publicly said that like he wound up like in the hospital with heart palpitations from all the rewrites he had to do on Gears.
Yep.
Right.
And he also kind of did it solo. Like he almost did all of that himself. He did wind up in the hospital. That's terrifying.
But the thing is like in his book, the whole point is he wound up comparing his cocaine addiction to the way video games can be addictive and like his addiction to Grand Theft Auto, right? Which is a really interesting kind of, Venn diagram overlap. But, a lot of respect from him. He actually has a blurb in the back here. So
nice.
Is that?
Yeah, I wanted to ask before we move on from the book. You finished it. What do you feel like is like the biggest thing you learned like about writing for actually finishing it? Like what was the thing when you started that you wish you could tell yourself?
It's a lot like shipping a game.
No way.
It really is. There's iteration. And then, like what happens also, and you're going to find when you ship your game, I don't know, is this your first game that you're going to be shipping?
Technically no, but it would be the one that I've been the most involved in. I've been at the studio for 2 years, so.
Okay, well, there's, the it's not a 1-to-1 because I hate to compare it to like women in pregnancy, especially considering the current climate of what's going on. There's this thing when you ship a game, now it's live products and it's like go. But back in the day, you'd ship a game and be done, maybe a little DLC, right? Now it's called seasons. And it was that thing where you get postpartum depression.
Yeah.
You'd be like, okay, I did it. Now what? Yeah, exactly. Jinx.
I feel like I've had that happen like E3 every year at IGN. It was like you crunch that whole week, or even the 2 months leading up to it, you're crunching, and then that week is like 2 hours sleep a night, and it's nuts, or it was back in the day.
Well, as you
and
know,
then it's
like,
done, and you're like, now what?
Yeah, well, at these conventions, you're also burning the candle at both ends, right?
Oh yeah.
You work all day long, go out, hang out with friends, oh, I haven't seen you in a while, blah, 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 have a few drinks, blah, 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 get a little bit of sleep. And then you get home and you sit in the sofa and like, you get that almost like tinnitus of silence. That like, and you're like,
I would intentionally fall asleep on the couch at E3 while working for IGN with the window open so that the sun would wake me at 8 a.m. just to make sure I got up, because that's how sleep deprived I was. I was like setting myself up to make sure that I woke up. Otherwise, I'd miss a fucking 8 a.m. interview with some developer on the show floor.
A great part of my convention life, and Lauren as well, was Red Bull and Claritin D.
Yeah.
Claritin D is the ultimate hangover cure. And I'm surprised, considering the fact that heart disease runs in my family. I didn't have a fucking heart attack back in those days, because like I said, you're burning the candle at fucking both ends.
Yeah.
And when I would throw that yacht party, it was like the culmination of like the highlight of my year. And, when I would go there, in the words of Justin Roiland, I would get, as you probably recall, get quite swifty. And so, gotta get swifty. Take off your pants, take a shit on the floor. But yeah, I'm bummed it's not going to happen this year. But Justin's doing well. We still stay in touch. I somehow want to transitioning from writing.
Yes. What did you learn, or like, give me a tip about finishing a book?
It's fucking hard, man.
I don't doubt that.
Like it's one thing to write fiction, right? And like I'm working on a comic book right now, right? I've been somewhat public about it, right? The thing is, working with Alex DeCampi. She wrote Maddie for Duncan Jones, who did Source Code, Moon, and World of Warcraft. We're Twitter buddies too. I'm Twitter buddies with David Bowie's son. Okay, that's crazy.
Duncan's great.
He's fantastic. And so what she does is like, I give her like my general outline of like where I want the story to go, right? And like my sloppy Cliff, typing like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs hands, right?
It's the best way to do it, in my opinion. Like, my biggest tip for people who want to finish writing things: start it like a kid's book. If you want to finish something, don't start it very intricate and detailed in every paragraph, or you'll just end up rewriting and editing the same paragraphs over and over. Write it like a kid's book. And then this happened, and this happened, and then this happened. And then Michael, you'll actually finish it.
Well, there's a Pixar masterclass on that, right? Like, once upon a time, there was so-and-so, and things were going fine until one day, and then this, that, and the other. And, I'm friends with a Stu Beat.
You should also always focus on therefore rather than and. So this happened, therefore, this happened, therefore, this happened, rather than and. It's a very useful thing to remind yourself when writing.
So I'm good friends with Stu Beatty, a fellow Aussie, who's a prolific screenwriter, director. And he was going to, he wrote a draft of the Gears movie. And he taught me one time that, like, in his opinion, a good movie, a good like fiction novel is something where characters at the start of the book or the movie, like at the end of the movie, do something you wouldn't have expected at the start.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it goes back to Star Wars, which is also, there's also a book, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it basically talks about like people love things that are familiar yet twisted a little bit. Right. And Star Wars is basically the Japanese movie Hidden Fortress, but retold by way of sci-fi. Like The Mandalorian is kind of, there's a Western about a dude and a child that he's escorting. And so if you think about the Mandalorian, it's essentially, it's a Western, right? And so Star Wars, Luke is, he's on the moisture farm. He's just this like, little whiny farm boy, right? And then eventually he winds up like, wrecking the Empire, like, and becoming this, badass with the Force, right? And so, when I remember, like, when as a kid, when I saw Return of the Jedi and he shows up wearing all black, it's this total badass at Jabba the Hutt's palace. I was just like, this is fucking great, like, and that's it.
Yeah, that's the hero's journey.
Well, that's exactly, there's an anecdote in my book about that, where I was at a bar in Milan on a Gears press tour, and I was talking to this gentleman about narrative and things like that. And for those of you who don't know, it's Joseph Campbell wrote this book called The Hero's Journey, which is required reading if you want to be a writer.
For sure.
And he basically, like, just kind of outlines, that. And so in the book, I actually have my own hero's journey. Nice. Right. It goes back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Homer's epics and whatnot. So, writing is one of those things, like, same thing with game design, like when I have a game idea, I will type out just a page, and it'll be sloppy. It'll have typos. but it's kind of like molding clay, and it's going to be all nasty. And then you just start, like kind of editing it and moving it. But the key is it's like sculpting, right? Like you don't want to chip away at it too much. There's the classic saying, actually, I'm going to go back to Mad Max Fury Road.
Brilliant film.
The best part about it is the doof guy with the fucking guitar.
So good.
And a lot of
practical.
People exactly. But so many people are like, I like the movie except for the guy with the guitar. I'm like, fuck
you. Wait, people didn't like that guy?
Yes. I'm like, that was the fucking best part. Right. And It's the same thing. Focus groups, what they could do is there's this cartoon I saw years ago where they said, like you have something unique shape. And they're like, and somebody comes in and edits it to make it like into just a perfect rectangle. So it fits in with all the other rectangles, removing everything that makes it unique. Right. And so the thing is, if you're going to write a memoir, or if you're going to write fiction, like find your voice and make it your own, and iterate, and get a good editor and get a good publisher if you can.
Oh, very good.
That's my TED Talk.
It's very good TED Talk. Also good for indie devs, like both of those things. It's like,
absolutely. My addiction these days is learning like businesses. I know how video games work. I'm learning how the restaurant business works. We're fortunate enough to own the real estate. So learning more about real estate, learning how Broadway works, learning how the comic industry works, learning how the publishing world and it works and whatnot. And just, there's so much overlap, but they're so different. So it's just been a really fascinating hero's journey.
That's a great position to be in. I hope I am where you are when I'm your age. That sounds awesome. Just choosing to dabble in things that you find interesting and learning a bunch about them and investing in projects that you like. That's dope.
Real quick before we go, do you get recognized often?
Relatively.
Yeah. So like once a week or so, or
I would say like once every time I go out.
Yep. Well, you're more, obviously, again, your engagement's way more than mine.
I don't go out that much though. So why do you ask?
I know the thing is, I tweeted that I got recognized the other night by a few fans, and it was at my beer garden, and they're like, I tweeted like, they wanted to like buy me a drink, and I'm like, no, I'm buying you a drink. You help pay for my fucking house. And it fucking like it blew up. And that's the thing is like, like the kind of fame that I have, which is, somewhat limited. It's the best kind of fame because it's like only once every week or two, right? Yeah. It's not like I can't go to the supermarket or anything like that, Like
you're in an interesting position where a lot of people might know your name rather than know your face as well. There might be people who know your name and know what you've done, but actually not be able to recognize you on the street, which is kind of awesome.
Well, now I have the beard of stealth too.
It's true. It hides everything. No one can tell who you are now.
One of my girlfriends said to me one time that beards are makeup for men.
It's true. If men are out here complaining about contour, then women should be allowed to complain about beards.
Exactly.
So before I let you go, I did want to ask some hard-hitting video game questions. What do you think is the best game ever written in terms of writing?
I'd say BioShock.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. It's a good answer.
I think Ken Levine's a fucking genius, like to pull that M. Night Shyamalan kind of twist, with Would You Kindly, like,
and the fact that it ties into gameplay is what gets me.
Exactly. It's about player agency. Are you playing the game or is it playing you?
Yeah.
Right. And that's fucking brilliant. And for the record, the greatest game of all time still remains Tetris.
I think it's Portal.
Yeah. Portal's pretty fucking genius.
Portal 1 and 2, I think, are the best games ever made. I think it's hard to argue against putting Portal on the top of a list. Tetris as well, though. And the fact that Tetris still holds up so well. My favorite game is Doom 1993. And even that is kind of similar, where it's like something that I play it today and I'll still fully understand everything. It still fucking holds up. Like, that game design hasn't aged.
The first half of my career, I hated John Romero and all that. And I wanted to take him down and all that stuff. And we're friends now years later. We're in like Croatia, hanging out with him and Brenda. But the thing is like Doom broke the mold. Oh, yeah. They were, there's a reason why Kushner wrote the book Masters of Doom, right? They were the fucking Beatles.
Tom Bissell then tried to turn into a TV show.
Yeah, we were talking about it, but COVID apparently fucked that. So hopefully it still happens because Silicon Valley can be a big show. Did you watch Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I loved it.
My catchphrase from Russ Henneman when I see somebody who's confident, I'm like, this guy fucks.
Yeah, it's a common one.
nonstop. So
yeah. The next question is going to be, where would you like to see video game writing go? Is there anywhere that you feel like the there's a direction that you strongly want video game narrative to head in? Something you want to see more of?
I always tell developers when possible to make it personal. Like if you look at the Gears trilogy, the first three, it was about the fact that Rod Ferguson, Lee Perry, and we lost our fathers at an early age, right? And so, it was all about Marcus Phoenix and his dad, Adam, and how eventually, Marcus thought he saw his father die, at the beginning. And then at the end, his father, activated his device, but experimented on himself with it. And Marcus saw his dad turn to ashes in front of him. A lot like what happened in Avengers. Anyway,
you did it first.
Yeah, exactly. Simpsons did it. But just that's the thing is, make it personal. And for developers, I hope they continue to try to find that balance between player agency and telling the story. There's so many ways in a video game to tell the story, from passive narrative of, scrapbooking, picking up a Post-it, reading logs or something like that, like System Shock 2, the ghosts are appearing in front of you and you're like, oh, what happened here? You're kind of deciphering the story yourself. And then also having cutscenes. So I think continuing to find that balance is going to be tricky, especially in the world we are in with seasons and living products and things like that, right?
For sure.
So it's evolving, it's ever evolving, and I just hope we don't put more writers in the hospital like Tom Bissell.
Oh boy, I don't doubt that that's happening more frequently than we realize.
Keep an eye on the blood pressure, Alanah.
Yeah. Hey, I'm good. I feel like I'm treated super well, thankfully. Like the studio is very, very, very good. Very compassionate. Like I asked if I could go home to Australia, and they were like, "Yeah, no worries." I was working at 3 a.m., but I was allowed to for like a month. It was awesome. It was so nice.
That's called good management, which is often rare in the video game industry.
My manager is fucking fantastic, because sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, I have a doctor's appointment. I have to do this work. Can I do this at this time?" He was like, "Yeah, just as long as you get the work done, just take your fucking doctor's appointment for it." I've had managers before who were like, "You can only take a doctor's appointment between these hours, and you must schedule it this far in advance." And like, it's
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's Santa Monica Studio more than anywhere else I've ever worked. I get treated like a human, which is wonderful. So
there's a reason that they keep cranking out fantastic games.
I think so too. Yeah. The last question I wanted to ask before I let you go is, what's something that you see in video game writing or narrative design that you don't like? What would be your least favorite, I don't know, trope, recurring thing, something about video game writing that you aren't a fan of, and why?
I got to think about this for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like shock writing, I think everything, it kind of goes back to stand-up comedy, which I'm a huge fan of as well. Like, you can joke about anything as long as you frame it within the right context, I believe.
Sure.
But that's the thing, again, like, it's just, don't just write for shock value, like, write and have a purpose, have a theme. And like, there's a reason they call some writers hacks.
Sure.
And again, video game writing's hard, right? But try and have a point, and like,
I do think it's a lot easier if you ground things in personal experience where you can.
Well,
you'll have an easier time writing.
Exactly. Always make it personal. The thing a quick personal anecdote is that, going back to like, when Gears was, 1, 2, and 3, was out, the comments were all like, this is a stupid bro game, blah, blah, blah.
I fucking loved Gears. Gears 2 made me cry.
Well, that's the thing. Thank you. Once in a while, I'll go to YouTube and I'll look up some of those, like, seminal cutscenes, and I'll read the comments, and like, we kind of fucked up an entire generation in a good way.
I like, even back when I was playing those games, I don't know, I was 13 or some shit, I found that offensive. Like, people would be like, Gears is a bro shooter, and I'd be like, have you played it? Sure, they look like human tree trunks, but I found 2 especially, all the stuff with Ty, even, super emotional.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the other thing is, like, make sure your stuff has heart. Like almost every Pixar movie I see makes me cry.
Yeah.
Like look at the first sequence in Up. Like, they put you on this express train,
so good,
to tears within like the span of like 4 minutes, right? Without any fucking dialogue, right? Like, that is a masterclass in writing and directing, cinematography and everything. And just make people feel stuff, and don't be offensive just to be offensive.
Any closing thoughts, Cliff? Is there anything else that you would like to share with the world?
I will always love video games. I will always love the industry, but I'm still going to consult. I'm still going to work on other things. The thing is, right now, what I'm doing is I'm just working on multiple IPs.
Cool.
and, spending my own dime on them. And we'll see where it goes. If it becomes a video game, fucking awesome. If it becomes a Netflix series, cool. If it becomes a movie, that's cool too. But I'm lucky enough to have the freedom to pursue different things that I want to now that I'm largely removed from the industry. But I like really, truly appreciate everybody who supported me throughout the years.
I'm glad your passion hasn't died. Video games are awesome.
I just like my sleep and a good shit.
I get it. Where can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm at the real Cliffy B. That's the only one I really need. I plug my Instagram on there sometimes, but I'm not a butt model, so there's no point. Let's be honest. Instagram is for butts.
Yeah, I probably don't follow enough butt-related accounts. I follow a lot of art.
There's an Instagram account called Butt Snorkeler.
Wow. And
they aggregate all like the lovely butt models of Instagram, and I'll be sitting there at a bar with my wife, and I'm like,
and there's a butt.
That's a pretty good butt.
I mostly follow dogs and artists, I'm pretty sure, and personal friends. I need more butts.
I think you've done that thing with, like, where once in a while, like you'll be in a bad mood and you're just like, you tweet like, just send me pictures of your fucking dogs, like.
Yeah, good. Love a good dog bait.
Or a quick final note, like, I don't know if you've seen the tweet about the dog thing that I posted, right? Kind of Don Bluth style, like a kind of husky, kind of looking over this domed city and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the inspiration for that IP came from right behind me is my shrine to my Australian Shepherd that I had for 13 years. He was there through my first marriage's crumbling. He was there through the Gears games. I had to put him down, which was one of the hardest days of my life. And then after the year of spontaneous crying stopped, Lauren found this Pomsky, which is mostly husky.
I think I've seen walking past in the background.
Yeah. And so basically, the thing is I'm friends with D&D from Game of Thrones, and I was lucky enough to go up to the final season premiere in New York, and then wound up partying with the cast in their suite until 4 a.m. Then we wound up on the way back scooping up this Pomsky. And I told myself, I have a belief that feelings are like tributaries, roots, rivers. You can redirect them in certain ways. And I told them, my brain, I'm like, in my heart, I'm like, let's just take every ounce of sadness I have from losing Teddy and pour it into love for Lady. Yeah. And so then Lady, she's such a weird, goofy, she's mostly husky, goofy, beautiful little creature. And every time I take her out to go potty, I give her a little kiss, and, I tell her how much I love her. And she's basically been my inspiration for this IP that I'm working on. And so that goes back to, my final note is make it personal.
Very good closing thought. Make it personal, everybody. Thank you for joining me, Cliff.
November 1st.
Get the book November 1st. And thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Always good seeing you.